Hey there, Ryan Black, real estate investor here, and today's quick investing tip, I want to talk to you about unlicensed additions or modifications that have been done on a property. When you go in and looking at that, identifying what has been done, how it's been done, and how that can affect your numbers. So the other day we were walking through a property that we were looking at, we were under contract, and it was interesting. There were a few things that had been done to the property that it was obvious that a handyman that lived there had done, right? You know what I'm talking about. You've seen this before. And so in going through, it was obvious that the outlets had been wired incorrectly. The drywall work was very shoddy, and you could tell there was a lot of things that were done wrong. So why does that matter? Well, first off, if we notice it and it looks bad, our end buyer is going to notice it, and they're probably going to say, hey, what is this, a joke? Right? This looks bad. So you might end up having to just demo what they did and redo it. So that's one consideration that you should have. The other thing is, if they didn't pull permits, and it was obvious in this situation and in many situations that they have not pulled permits, because if they had pulled permits, inspections would have been performed and things like plumbing and electrical issues wouldn't be an issue. And so, a licensed electrician is not going to wire electrical outlets backwards. They know which side is hot, which side is neutral. So it's obvious whoever did it didn't know what they were doing. They watched a half a YouTube video and then figured, I can do this. This is easy. And then they wonder why none of their stuff works when they plug it in. But I digress. So in looking at that, if they did not pull permits, then, the city technically could say, hey, this was an unlicensed addition. It needs to be torn down, it needs to be demoed, it needs to be done, or you need to open up the walls and we need to verify the work that's been done, especially if it's obvious that it's been done wrong. So you got to keep that in mind when you look, if you're looking at a property and you're like, oh cool, the basement's all done. Like the basement's already been done. This is awesome. We've got all this, this extra work that we've saved. You got to be careful, because you might just have to demo everything they did and then redo it again, depending on what they did. So very, very important to understand and realize if any prior work has been done on a property, was it done by a professional? Was it done correctly? Was it licensed? Was it permitted? And just keep that in mind when you're looking at the opportunities that you have of as far as running your numbers and seeing, what you're going to need to put into it to get it up to par. Keep that in mind, because if it's done too poorly, you're going to end up having to demo it anyways, and who knows what you might find once you get in there. So don't be fooled by saying, oh, it's already done, they already did the work, sweet, because we've seen a lot of situations where stuff that other people have done, we've simply just ripped it out and rebuilt it because it was so wrong, right? The walls were so skewed, or the doors wouldn't close, the electrical was all messed up, the plumbing, where the greatest one is when you see in the bathroom in the basement where the toilet is up on a pedestal, right? So you walk in the bathroom and then there's like a step up where you have to step up to get to the toilet, because they didn't know plumbing, and they didn't know how to correctly install the toilet flange and everything and cut it down, and so there was just the pipe sticking up out of the basement floor, and they said, hey, I bet we could stick a toilet on this. And they did. And then they put a box around it. So you see the craziest things that sometimes you just gotta demo it out and do it again. So just keep that in mind as you're looking at a property, as you're walking through, and you can tell, really, you can tell, and see, especially because usually in a house where you have a handyman, right, that does no idea what they're doing, you can tell because they will have painted and done drywall work and carpentry work and sometimes plumbing, electrical. Like, you'll see their influence throughout the whole house where you can see like, oh, okay, they decided to fix this and that and this and that. And so, you just kind of have to, using lamp cord as instead of Romex, because it's like, hey, lamp cord, Romex, same thing, right? Sometimes we're surprised that the houses we walk in have not burned down because you see the things that they've done. You're thinking, how on earth, wow. We're grateful that nothing happened to the family that lived here beforehand, right? So very important. And if you ever have any doubts, right, if you're like, you know what, I really don't know enough about electric, or I don't know enough about plumbing, something seems off, and you're unable to personally identify, wow, this was completely done wrong, this is not up to code, et cetera, bring in a professional, right? Part of your team, members of your team are different professionals in different areas of construction, real estate development, all that. So call in the plumber, call in the HVAC guy, call in the electrician to say, hey, I need you to walk through this with me. Tell me, what are we looking at? Is this like a $1,000 fix, or is this a $10,000 fix, right? Because sometimes, they've got to go and strip and rewire the house. You could have serious things that need to be redone, depending on what they did initially. So protect yourself, protect your capital investors, make sure you're making educated decisions, and do your due diligence so that you're protected, you have less surprises moving through the transaction, and don't be afraid to be critical and to ask questions. That's one thing I see is with newer investors. They're like, well, I didn't want to offend the homeowner by asking them. Or I didn't want to, ask the listing agent about this, and that I saw. Who cares? Don't worry about offending them or hurting their feelings saying, now this looks a little different. Tell me what happened here. Because the person most likely knows that they suck at repairs. Like, you're not telling them anything they didn't know. What you are showing is, I'm informed and I have an eye for detail, and I notice that something's off. So don't worry about hurting their feelings. Be direct, be respectful, right? But be direct, find out the information, investigate, do your due diligence, and things will go well for you.